Chapter 64-95. Then he looked at John and smiled. "But it's too early for you to be happy." John subconsciously asked. "Sir, what do you mean by this?" Charlie asked him, "Have you ever thought that the old witch cut off your left hand to let others know that you have paid the price? Now that your left hand has grown back, how can she make an example out of you?" This. John has also thought about this problem. But what he thought was that he would immediately report everything to the Lord. And tell the Lord all the clues about this man. Maybe the Lord would consider his merits and forgive him. But of course, he couldn't tell Charlie this. So he said with difficulty, "Sir, you are right. How to deal with that old witch is indeed a thorny problem. But you don't have to worry about it. I will find a way myself." Charlie smiled and said, "In fact, I have a good way. I guarantee that you can keep your left hand." John asked hurriedly, "Please teach me, sir." Charlie narrowed his eyes slightly, and then suddenly grabbed John's right wrist. And then infused his palm with spiritual energy, turning his palm into a knife. Suddenly, he raised his hand, and the knife fell, and actually cut off John's right hand. John was sweating and twitching in pain. He looked at Charlie in horror and wanted to scream, but found that his throat was tightly sealed by a force and he couldn't scream at all. At this moment, he finally realized that Charlie didn't mean to give him the elixir, but deliberately wanted to play a trick on him. The Lord cut off his left hand, and after a few days, his left hand came back, but his right hand is gone now. Isn't this a slap in the face of the Lord? And he used his regrown left hand to hit the Lord in the face. This guy is so sinister and vicious, he deserves to die. Charlie looked at his extremely painful and angry expression and smiled. "Don't look at me with such angry eyes. What are you angry about? You just exchanged your right hand for your left hand, isn't it the same which hand you keep? 1 for 1, you don't lose anything. But I gave you a reshaping pill for free. In the end, I am the one who suffers." John was completely irritated by Charlie's remarks. But at this moment, he didn't even have the ability to scold him, let alone resist and take revenge. Originally, he was very excited to watch his left hand grow out little by little, and witnessed this unparalleled miracle with his own eyes. But who would have thought that Charlie would make him suffer the pain of having his hand cut off for the second time? The key point is that Charlie's attack was much more cruel than the 3 elders. The 3 elders were all his great-grandfathers, and they were more or less sympathetic to the younger generation. Not only did they cut cleanly and neatly, and the wounds were neatly arranged, but more importantly, the pain was not that intense. However, Charlie was not his great-grandfather, so how could he give him any special care? He really relied on the blessing of spiritual energy to cut off his right hand. The pain was no different from being cut off by an axe for chopping wood. And what John couldn't accept the most was that losing his right hand would have a much greater impact than losing his left hand. He is a standard right-hand person. Most of the actions that require fine manipulation in life are basically completed by his right hand. Without his left hand, his life will not be greatly affected. But without his right hand, he even has to relearn and adapt how to pick up food with chopsticks, which has a great impact on his life. At this time, he hated Charlie in his heart. He hated him for being cruel and ruthless and hated him for playing tricks on him. He couldn't think of how there could be such a mean person in the world. In order to play tricks on him, he didn't take out the priceless things and wasted them in vain. Seeing the murderous intent in his eyes, Charlie smiled and said, "I advise you to soften your eyes. If you continue to look at me like this, I will dig out your eyes. Anyway, the only purpose of keeping you is to let Victoria see the left-right exchange technique of your 2 hands. As for whether your eyes are there or not, it doesn't matter." John was so scared that he trembled all over, and his eyes immediately changed from a ferocious wolf to a wrong dog. He looked at Charlie with tears in his eyes, trying to soften his eyes with tears as much as possible so that he would look harmless. seeing that he did what he was told.